So you're arguably the candidate with the greatest advantage in this race. You've been the vice president. You weren't burdened down by the impeachment trials. Or in the participation. So how do you explain the performance in Iowa, and why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
It's a good question. Number one, Iowa's a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be.
This has not been a good week for Joe Biden. And that's to put it mildly. This has not been a good week for Joe Biden. Joe Biden called the woman a dog-faced liar, which, probably a bad form. And if you're in the middle of calling someone a dog-face in general, you've probably gone too far. But this is endemic of stress. This is a man that feels it slipping away. I want you to notice her question. Hey, your main claim to fame is this notion of electability, and you have all of this name recognition and everything else, but how do you explain coming in a distant fourth? Well, this woman, that question is not just on her mind. That question is on the minds of a lot of people. And what's showing, especially when you look at recent polling, that question screaming. And to be fair, it's not even a question. People have come to the conclusion that Joe Biden is no longer electable. And a trend that has been in place, I'm a sucker for trends, I fetishize trends, a trend that has been in place for the entirety of this election has just fell apart. And with it, Joe Biden's claim to the primary or to the presidency. Joe Biden's campaign has utterly and entirely collapsed. By the same token, conversely, Sanders' campaign, despite being shafted out of all the publicity that he should have gotten out of outright winning Iowa, he still got a bump. And that's a bump on what was already a surge. And so going into New Hampshire, which is going to be tomorrow, the primary election for New Hampshire is going to be tomorrow, the question becomes, what happens? Now, Sanders still has a significant lead in New Hampshire. So even though Buttigieg has gotten a bump, 12, 14 points in some cases, he's still behind. And after the debate yesterday, or I should say Friday, it seems that his momentum, for the most part, has been blunted. I want to go into some of the recent polling because I want you to see my argument about trends and how the moment a trend breaks, something has to change within the context of the polling. And the trend that is broken is Joe Biden more electable? And an answer that by like 20 points, people would say resoundingly, yes, has become, especially when compared to the other people in the race. Even questions of who do you think has the best chance of winning? It immediately goes down to Sanders. And I'm going to show you some other items from the most recent polling. Either way, if your name is Bernie Sanders, you have to be feeling pretty goddamn good right about now. It is true you need to protect the vote. It is true they're going to do everything they can to shaft you. It is true they're trying to steal Iowa from you. But the catch is, they have to do that stuff. Meaning, they have to steal it from you. They have to shaft you because they know what I've known for a few months now, that given a fair election, they're toast. Their main guy, Joe Biden, has just fallen apart. Beautiful thing. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support. PayPal, Patreon. Tomorrow is an election, and on election days, I feel like they're holidays. And so I have been excited, angry, bitter, vindictive, proud at my correctness in regards to prognostication. All of those things, all within just a week. Ugh, fucking love it. So there are several polls that have come out. I fetishize trends. That is true. I try to make the point that the beauty of a trend is that you see it over multiple polls. And it's one of those things that, especially if it's a significant trend, it tends to show throughout. You don't just need one particular poll. The thing that Joe Biden was living off, I've said it on more than one occasion, was electability. You could see it. Who has the best policy ideas? Sanders. Who's best on healthcare? Sanders. Who's the best on environment? Sanders. Who's best on economy? It may flip to Joe Biden and Sanders. And then it says, what do you care about most? And they would say, you got to be able to beat Trump. And then they would ask the second question. Who do you think beats Trump? And by like 20 points, you get Biden. Then you look at the actual polling result, and Biden, if you were talking about a national poll, would be up like 5 or 6. Now, this was always aggravating to me because it's like, God, the guy's not more electable. The guy can barely get a sentence out. He has all sorts of failings and failures and everything else. But it took Iowa and him coming in 4th place to make that crystal clear. This is, for example, right here. This is Emerson, New Hampshire for tomorrow. Sanders, 30, no change. Buttigieg, plus 3. Now, Buttigieg has moved up, again, like 12, 15 points in New Hampshire. They were just that far behind Sanders. Klobuchar, 14. Warren, 11. Biden, 10. Biden, 10. There are 2 things that should jump out at you here. Looking at that poll, that's astonishing. The first, Klobuchar has subsumed Biden's position and Warren's position. Klobuchar has moved into 3rd place in the Emerson poll. Warren has dropped all the way down to 11 points. She's barely in double digits. And Biden, barely in double digits. What did I tell you? I said, electability is a fickle mistress. I think that's the way I used to say it. And my reasoning was, it doesn't depend on anything. It's not, this guy has these really good policies that I think, well, it's not that. I think he could beat Trump. But why do you think he could beat Trump? Because, frankly, everybody that I talk to, everybody that's in my bubble, all of my self-selected friends, everybody who's around me believes this. And because everybody around me believes this, it has to be true. Well, it doesn't have to be true. Hillary Clinton wasn't inevitable, and Joe Biden wasn't more electable. And the moment that Iowa happened, all of those people, meaning all of the things that popped up, Joe Biden not remembering Obama's name, Joe Biden not knowing where he was, Joe Biden, in this case, lying flagrantly about Social Security, and then not just lying about Social Security, attacking Sanders for attacking him for lying about Social Security. All of Joe Biden's failings all of a sudden came to fruition in Iowa. And all of those people thought to themselves, oh my God. Joe Biden dropped and collapsed so precipitously that Pete Buttigieg, for the most part, subsumed his support. In some of these polling, Biden would go down 5, Buttigieg would go up 5. It was literally that specific in regards to losing support. Same thing with Warren, though. Keep in mind, many of the people who are voting for Biden or who are voting for Warren also would vote for Buttigieg, meaning this kind of float between these type of voters. And you had the section that would, for Warren, that was more conservative, the section that for Biden that was more conservative. Boom. All into Pete. So Pete gets a massive bump. 23. Let's go to another one. This is Capital Weekly poll. This one is for California. Sanders, blowout. A blowout. It wasn't always this way. But right now it is. Because again, the number 2 person, or the number 1 person, depending on what poll you were looking at that was in this race, has just collapsed. All at once, up in smoke. Joe Biden is going to go through New Hampshire where he is going to get bullied. And to some degree, it becomes an almost self-fulfilling prophecy type thing. And now, crippled, he has to go into Nevada. And if he doesn't do well in Nevada, which he very well might not, he can call it a day. He is trying to survive to South Carolina. But again, I made the point that state polls or national polls lie. We don't choose our president nationally. We choose them through the states. In one primary to the next primary, there's a momentum bump, potentially, depending on the person. And that momentum bump can carry you into the next state. If your name is Joe Biden and you are living off of electability and you end up losing into a distant 4th, and you're going to go to another state where you may end up in a distant 4th or 5th, how do you argue electability from that standing? You heard that woman's question. Her basic question was, how are you more electable if you came in a distant 4th? He's trying to argue, well, that was a caucus. That doesn't really matter. What people see is you came in a distant fourth. In the California poll, blowout. Blowout. There's no way else to explain it. A blowout. Let's go to the next one. New Hampshire, Democratic primary polling. This one is Suffolk, Boston Globe. Buttigieg, that was on a tear at one point after the primary, after the fake win. Well, his momentum has started to be curbed, especially after that last debate. Because fact is, Buttigieg didn't do great in the debate. He never does great in the debates. He stands there, he bullshits, barely know what he's talking about at the end of the debate, but there are a lot of people out there who makes them feel good. Personally, the empty suit thing that Obama had, I think that's why people call him Gay Obama. I call him Gay Obama. It doesn't do anything for him. I mean, ultimately, he gets fact-checked. He caught lying on stage when the moderator asked him a follow-up question saying, no, that's not true. Ultimately, you did have an increase in the number of African Americans that were arrested under your mayorship. And then he gets bullied by Sanders and Klobuchar on the debate stage. So Buttigieg and his momentum seems to have been stymied at this point. Down 3, Sanders, up 3. This is after the debates. National polls. Since December, Sanders is taking the lead in national polls, 25%, up 4. Joe Biden has gone down 9. This is nationally. In aggregate of polls going back to December, down 9 to 17%. Bloomberg, up 7 to 15%. Warren, under Bloomberg, at 14%. Now, I've mentioned before that Bloomberg is a risk. It's not that so much that I think Bloomberg wins. It's more so that I think Bloomberg can try to con enough people with cash. I mean, he's going to spend $500 million in the primary process. So, don't sleep on Bloomberg. I strongly suspect that Tom Perez, the Democratic Party, are for the most part going to throw themselves at Bloomberg if it means stopping Sanders. And not just stopping Sanders. Think of what Bloomberg can do for pretty much everybody else in the Democratic Party that Tom Perez and his ilk like. Meaning Bloomberg can self-fund all of those campaigns up and down the Democratic Party. So it's not just the $325,000 that Tom Perez got. It is also the money that he can give to everybody else in a party that is, for the most part, broke. Here's another one. This is CNN's New Hampshire tracking poll. Sanders up 1, 29%. Buttigieg up 1, 22%. Again, Sanders still has a distant lead. I think Buttigieg, they gave his chance about 30%. They gave Sanders about a 60% chance of winning New Hampshire. So, look at this one, though. Quinnipiac. Sanders, since January 27th, up 4 to 25%. This is national polling. Joe Biden, down 9 to 17%. Now, you must understand why this is important. Even though I say national polling lied, national polling does give you a flavor, and it does allow you to also see trends. Meaning, if every poll that was taken by Quinnipiac showed Biden in the lead, and then he is no longer in the lead, then it follows the trends that you've been seeing since Iowa, and you can make an argument even before Iowa, before we even got into Iowa, when those fights started to take place on Social Security. Quinnipiac, Joe Biden has just lost his lead in Quinnipiac. This is the third poll that I think came out where Sanders for the first time had taken the lead. One was, I think, CNN. Another one was, I think, NBC. But get into the data on this. It gets that much more fascinating. So, right here. Question. Who do you vote for? If the election was held today, who would you vote for? Sanders, 27%. Biden, 14%. Warren, 16%. Am I reading that right? No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I read that wrong. All right, so first one. If the Democratic election was held today, who would you vote for? Sanders, 25%. Biden, 17%. Warren, 14%. Buttigieg, 10%. All right. But look at what it was in January. Biden was at 26% in January. In December, he was at 30. That's a precipitous fall. I mean, even if you're going back to like January 13th, for the most part, Joe Biden has literally collapsed. You look at Sanders, he was at 21, he was at 19, he was at 16. He steadily increased to the point where he is now. It was not like a massive jump. He just slowly and steadily increased. Warren, for the most part, has gone down to 14, again, steadily decreasing. Here's another question. All right, here's another question. Which candidate do you think is the best leader? Sanders, 22, Biden, 22. Now, again, beforehand, Joe Biden was at 31 on that issue. Like when I'm saying Joe Biden collapsed, I mean Joe Biden collapsed. It's not just the numbers. It's the numbers inside the numbers. He went from 31 to 22 in less than a month in regards to the people thinking whether or not he was a good leader. And again, he just called that woman a dog-faced liar. So you can kind of see where people's head is on that and why they think maybe this guy is not the best person for the job. Let's keep going. Warren was never high up on that one, so fair enough. Which candidate do you think has the best policy ideas? Sanders, 27. Not even close. Nobody else is close. Now, when we go down here, Sanders was at 22, Biden was at 18, meaning Sanders was leading this. Well, at one point, Warren was leading. But for the last 2 months, Sanders at the very least has been at the top or leading this. But Biden has gone down that much further, even from, again, January 28th to February 10th. Collapsing, even in areas where he was already collapsing. Who do you think has the best chance of beating Trump? Now, that's the question, right? That's the electability question. This is the question that Joe Biden has dominated as a trend, dominated, not even close, dominated. Who do you think has the best chance of beating Trump? Joe Biden plummets on that one also. He's 3 points ahead of Sanders on that. Now, when you say, wait, 3 points ahead, wait a minute. Is that right? Yes, that's right. He's 3 points ahead of Sanders. But I want you to take a look at something. Joe Biden back in January 28th was at 44. He's dropped to 27. Put that in perspective. Early January, who do you think is more electable? The overwhelming majority of the people say Joe Biden. Less than a month, who do you think is more electable? And barely, he's at 27. Like when I say Joe Biden collapsed. And right here, Sanders, 24. What did I mention? I said when it gets to the point where they look at Joe Biden and they look at somebody else and they say, I think somebody is just as electable, is not more so, then logically you're going to go towards the guy that has the electability and the policy ideas. Because if the guy can get elected and he can implement those policy ideas, that's of course better than somebody who may be able to get elected but have no policy ideas of worth to implement. In this very specific case, when Joe Biden collapsed on this notion of electability, which you can look at it for yourself, January 28th, 44, February 10th, 27. Sanders, January 28th, 19, February 10th, 24. And what did that translate to? That number translated effectively to this. Right here. $25.17. Meaning, when I made the argument to you that Joe Biden was living on electability, and that when you look at poll after poll after poll, Joe Biden may have a modest lead, and that modest lead, he would have this massive number from the standpoint of electability. Well, it's pretty straightforward to look at that and say, okay, if he only has a modest lead, the people said the thing they care about the most is electability, and he's beating electability like 30 points, then the lead has to be tethered to the electability. The moment that the electability argument fell flat, he collapsed. I was right. I was right all the way through it. I'm going to cover the show for New Hampshire tomorrow. But needless to say, Sanders is still leading massively in New Hampshire. If he is not robbed or cheated, he should be running out there like a bat out of hell with a head full of steam going into Nevada. And the question becomes, who comes in third, second, and fourth? Meaning, does Buttigieg pull into the second spot? If Buttigieg doesn't get the second spot, then he would have collapsed. That would be a bad showing for him. If Sanders doesn't win, that's a bad showing for him. Biden, I would imagine, has to at least crawl into third. I mean, if Joe Biden ends up in another fourth or, God forbid, fifth place position, he can call it a wrap. It's done. He's not going to make it to South Carolina. He may not even make it to Nevada. Warren still has to answer the question of why are you in this race? And at this point, her support, especially the support from lefties, have consolidated around Sanders. That's probably why she's gone into this identity politics stuff, because I think on some level she gets the people who she needed that were lefties have essentially went with the guy who they believe is an actual lefty. Right now, the Iowa Democratic Party is making the argument literally, and this is New York Times reporter Trip Gabriel. Tonight, the IDP chair, Troy Price, sent an internal email that the party attorney says a re-examination of the precinct results cannot change the results on caucus math worksheets, even if they are wrong. Even if they're wrong. Quote, the incorrect math on the caucus math worksheets must not be changed to ensure the integrity of the process. God, that's Orwellian. So the fact that the Democratic chair would say that, effectively, look, because all the reporters, all the newspapers make the point that the results are wrong and that you can't call this race because the results are wrong. The accuracy of it cannot necessarily be verified. That didn't stop the DNC or the Iowa Democratic Party from awarding Pete Buttigieg, who lost by like 6,000 votes, 2 more delegates than Sanders. Sanders is pushing for a recaucus and everything else. But my basic point is that the Democratic Party knows that the results are wrong. The Democratic Party knows that the results cannot be confirmed for accuracy. And they are making the argument that in order to ensure the integrity of the process, you cannot change those wrong, incorrect, inaccurate results. I make that point just to say that just because Sanders is leading in New Hampshire doesn't mean they won't try to steal it. And fact of the matter is, New Hampshire, I'm concerned about that a little bit less, only because New Hampshire is where he won the first time around in 2016. But don't get complacent. That's my only point. There is a headwind on Sanders in all of these races. That headwind is we hate his guts. We need to find a way to stop him by hook or by crook. I think you saw that in Iowa. I don't think anybody in their right minds honestly believes that all of these things were just coincidences, and all of these coincidences just so happened went to the benefit of Buttigieg against the interests of Sanders, including walking out on CNN where they say, hey, congratulations, you won, because all the results came out immediately when Buttigieg went out. The problem here is that these guys are so brazen in their cheating and corruption that they are literally willing to certify results that are wrong and arguing that wrong ensures the integrity of the process. So the only way for Sanders to win this is to blow them out. Meaning it has to be a situation where people can't get complacent, they can't get blue, they can't get downtrodden. They have to look at this from the perspective of we're going to blow them out. They're either going to have to cheat the fuck out of me, where it is clear and obvious that they're doing so, which fortunately at that point would be the end of the Democratic Party, or they have to stand aside. He needs to blow it out. That's my point. So despite these numbers looking great for him, my point is don't get complacent. And not just don't get complacent. Be aware that in my head, if he's not 5, 6, 7, 8 points up, then it is the potential to be gamed. That's how little I think of the Democratic Party. That's how lack of credibility I see that party is having. So yeah, great. In a fair contest, Sanders blows him out the water. But that's not where we are. I don't think anybody can look at what took place in Iowa and come away from that process thinking, totally fair. Nothing wrong with that at all. I'm going to end this here because I have other videos that I want to do. But he's not doing bad. He's actually doing well. The catch becomes whether or not he can, maintain it. I mean, look, for all of my pressing on Sanders, ultimately, you stay with the horse that got you there, right? And in his case, he's done an amazing job. I wish he was more aggressive at times. But by the same token, when I look at the cheating thing, that's the thing that probably concerns me more than anything else in this race. And they have taken somewhat of an aggressive tact in calling for a recanvass, apparently having lawyers engaged in this process from jump, having minders at the various places, having his own app. So I don't necessarily think they're going to sleep on this. And it seems like they're fighting for every delegate. I mean, for fuck's sake, they're fighting for a delegate. Yes, good. I think they should fight for a delegate. You need to show your base, you need to show your supporters that you're going to go out there and you're going to fight tooth and nail for everything. It's required, especially after what took place in 2016. It is required. It is not just good politics. It is what you should be doing just in general, being the avatar of all of these people's will. So don't get complacent, blow them out. And if they're going to cheat you, make them cheat the shit out of you, so much so that it has become obvious and apparent, and it could just mean the end of the Democratic Party and go the way of the Whigs. Sharky Sharks. Bloomberg is only in this for a contested convention. Yes, he wants to buy the nomination. Yes. Well, yes, potentially, yeah. So my thought for Bloomberg was one or two things. Either Bloomberg wants to force it into a convention where it could be stolen from Sanders. Now, whether that's stolen and given to Bloomberg himself or whether that's stolen and given to somebody else, I don't particularly know. But it does seem like Tom Perez opening up the debates like this to Bloomberg after getting $325,000. I think the $325,000 is the thing that matters a little bit less. I think what matters more so is that Bloomberg by himself can fund all of these elections, up and down ticket, especially third-way Democrats, and a party that for the most part is bankrupt. A party that is going to be going up against a cash machine by the Republican Party because Donald Trump has been getting money hand over fist, especially during the impeachment hearings. Yeah, look at the way that backfired. So, you know, if you're Bloomberg and you're buying endorsements, you're giving people money to write nice things about you, you have a newspaper that can write nice things about you and attack your political opponents, even though he said he wasn't going to do that. Yeah, I think Bloomberg is a threat. I mean, after all, Bloomberg has pulled up in like 10%, and all of that's cash. Nobody was clamoring for Bloomberg. All of that is just cash. It's true, nobody has really thrown a punch at Bloomberg yet, so that's fair. And I have a hard time believing how stop and frisk is ever going to get through the primary process, meaning no lefty is going to vote for Bloomberg. They're just not. I don't see it. And especially Sanders supporters, you have a situation where you have 20 or 30%, 40, 50% people who just don't vote for you because they think you stole the process. You're going to lose. I would make the argument that nominating Bloomberg is effectively a loss. I mean, I don't know how he makes it through. Meaning, even if he can buy his way through the primary, he's going to lose the general election by people who thought he just bought his way through the primary. They're going to find it to be ideologically against it. Cool Blue 71. In 2016, Hillary's national margin over Bernie Sanders was plus 12 percentage points. Take 2020 compared to 2016, it's a big shift towards Bernie. States flip. Yes, Cool Blue. Agreed. Agreed. But it's not that. But that's not the issue. Like, think with what you know now of Iowa, one of the complaints that the Democratic Party is making is, look, part of the problem is we had to show both totals, the first and the second total. And so, oh, wait, so you're saying that the moment that you had to show your results, I mean, because you were supposed to be taking those results anyway, the moment you had to show those results, you're saying that that screwed you up, having to show your work? So what took place in 2016? Hell, what took place in 2012? Like, you can go back in time and you can ask, if Iowa fucked it up this royally, and the only reason you're able to see it because you can actually see their work, what does it mean for the other states? And what does it mean for 2016? Those are infinitely fair questions, given what you just saw last week and what they're trying to do now, meaning confirm results that they know are wrong. That should tell you a ton about the Democratic Party. Rob R., can you bring Bev Harris on again for TLK election fraud? Maybe. I'll see. We've been getting pretty busy in regards to the number of shows that are coming out. And in this very specific case, the election fraud, it was so obvious and apparent. It was utterly absurd. I do think it'll be interesting to have a talk with Dev about things that are not as obvious. Meaning, you've heard me make my case before. Like, does Sanders come out? If you have a situation where exit polling shows Sanders to win by, I don't know, 5 points, and instead he loses by 10, well, is he going to call cheating on that? Are you going to ask for a recount? Are you going to go in to try to investigate? That's some more of a subtle issue of cheating, right? Because that gets into this notion of voting machines and how they could potentially be hacked or spoofed in some way. And with everything that you know right now that took place out of Iowa, and you have another app that they're trying to convince you it's not an app, even though it's on a device, and it is literally as a flat fact an application. Well, yeah, all of these things have a certain degree of, even if it's not intentional, the fact that it comes out and cuts against Sanders, it may as well be. How can it not be intentional if it always goes in one direction? Benny Ford, but yes, I'll think about it. I'll see if I can get her on. And there was one more before I move on to the next story. By the way, the show starts on the 18th, and that's going to be from 12 to 2, Monday through Friday. Effectively next week on Tuesday, 12 to 2. And you guys are more than welcome to call in on that particular show. There was one more that for some reason I can't find, and it's not letting me see. What the hell? All right. When Bernie Sanders responded to Pete, the way you win is to bring together the working class. God damn it. Google is fucking with me. Give me 1 second. All right. So there's one more that I'm going to get to when I get the opportunity to finally see it. Google is hiding that particular tweet from me for some reason. Look, guys, I know I've been having this, Laura Steiner disagrees with me on this. And I've had some people say, oh, dude, you're being negative. Look, I don't give a shit whether people consider how I take this stuff as being negative or not. What I care about is what's true. And if it is true that indeed they're trying to rig the process, then you need to call that out. It doesn't mean that you get any less active. In fact, maybe you get that much more active because you're pissed off. But you should know. You shouldn't have this, we're not going to tell people that they're being cheated because it may make them feel blue and they won't show up at the polls. Fuck that. I want them to be angry and pissed off that the party is trying to steal their vote. And the issue is not so much that blue and disenchanted and everything else. Your job at that point is to motivate those people that they are trying to steal your vote. They're trying to steal this election, and you need to get that much more animated and involved in ensuring that your guy gets over the finish line and they're not able to do it. All of those Sanders supporters were out there looking over the polling results, and they were finding those items in order to put on their pages in order to spread the word that they were being cheated and rigged. That's a positive thing. It puts more eyes into the process. I think the fear is that those people get disenchanted. It's not the issue of being disenchanted. They need to know what's true, and they need to know what's real, and they need to know that a particular party hates one of the candidates in this race and will do any and everything in their power to stop that particular guy. After all, Bill Clinton puts his rape hand on Tom Perez. Don't let them take the party. Well, Tom is doing double duty this week. Tom throwing his body out there when Pete Buttigieg calls and say, hey, a lot of black people are bringing the totals close. You need to do something, Tom. In which Tom Perez gets angry. Enough is enough. Pete called me about these black folks voting for Bernie Sanders. The thing is, Sanders, the amount of people that he had, there were people of color. I think he had like 40% or over 40% of the people of color in that race. I said during the election night, I said if Sanders wins Iowa, it would be on the backs of the various people of color in that community. It just so happened that was absolutely right. When Bernie Sanders responded to Pete, the way you win is to bring the working class together. Bernie Sanders should have added, Pete, you used to know this until you took big money from insurance and Wall Street kill shot. That would have been nice, especially since you have the video of Pete Buttigieg talking about how awesome Medicare for All is and talking about we shouldn't be bothered with the socialism label. This is like last year. Just like last year, Pete got his mind right. That's what that is about. Pete got his mind right. It's like, here's some money, Pete. You got 40 billionaires. Yeah, that socialism stuff. I'm not on board for that now. Pete got his mind right. All right, and last one. Bump up the comment. Bump up the comment. Well, I tried to, but I got it. I got it. All right. Like, share, subscribe. This video went a little bit longer than I wanted, but honestly, there was a lot of polling that came out. I mean, I didn't even go through all of it. They were putting out polling like every day since the last Iowa election. They were taking a tracking poll day after day after day after day. In those tracking polls, Pete was shooting up like a rocket. After the debate, that shit stopped. So, you know, the attacks about this guy got 40 billionaires and this guy, apparently those things are drawing a little bit more blood than I think I originally thought they would. Not to mention Tom Steyer. Tom Steyer making the point, Pete can't bring the country together. Pete can't bring the country together. And then making this full-throated argument for reparations. Now, for Tom Steyer, he has no other path to get through this race as opposed to doing something that's risky and that nobody else is doing. Hence, this is the route that he's going, especially from the standpoint of South Carolina. And then he's thirsty for Sanders. But again, I think that has more to do with him trying to, you know, Sanders thinks I'm a good billionaire. Look at us and the photo op. Whatever. All I'm saying is those attacks drew blood. And I don't think Pete had particularly a great debate. So I'll leave it here. Like, share, and of course, subscribe. I'll see you guys in about 10 minutes. Thanks all.